This happened 2 weeks ago. I'm 34, and I've spent years as a wildlife photographer. I love exploring remote places. I thought I knew what I was getting into when I packed my gear for a 10-day trip in an uncharted forest. I set up my base camp in a clearing surrounded by towering pines. It felt peaceful at first, except for the distant calls of wildlife. I usually found those sounds comforting, but I've never stopped thinking about what happened next. The first night was quiet. I cooked a simple meal and went to bed early. But on the second night I woke up feeling odd. There were rustling noises outside my tent. I thought it might be raccoons or something small, but the sounds seemed too close. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, but saw nothing, just shadows shifting in the moonlight. I felt cold, and a knot formed in my stomach. I went back to check my gear. That's when I noticed my camera memory card had somehow erased everything. The only thing left was a single, grainy image. I raised the camera to look at it. It was just a blurry shape. I couldn't shake the feeling it was watching me. Maybe I was just tired. I tried to brush it off. Days passed, and I carried on with my trip. I spent time setting up shots, hoping to catch some elusive wildlife. I thought I'd get used to the odd noises, but they only got louder. It started as whispers, like voices weaving through the trees. I guessed it was the wind. But something felt wrong. One day, while hiking deeper into the woods, I stumbled upon trees with strange symbols carved into the bark. I knelt down to examine them. My heart raced as I traced my fingers over the grooves. What did they mean? I glanced around, feeling watched. The feeling was unsettling. I told myself it was my imagination. Then I saw something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow flickered between the trees. When I turned my head, it was gone. I stood there, my breath hitching in my throat. I couldn't quite shake the dread that something was lurking, waiting. I hurried back to camp. That night, the whispers returned. They were louder, clearer, like they were right outside my tent. I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the shadows dancing on the fabric of my tent. With each passing hour, I felt a growing urgency to leave. But I was in the middle of nowhere. Then I heard scratching at the side of my tent. I held my breath and waited. After a moment I reached for my flashlight, but before I could shine it, I heard a voice just outside saying my name. I was frozen. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the wind. But when I finally got the courage to poke my head out, I remember that moment vividly. The clearing was empty, except for a chill that ran down my spine. I think I left something behind in that forest. I'm not sure if it was just my sanity or something worse. That morning, I felt the weight of exhaustion hanging over me. I had hardly slept, and the whispers from last night still echoed in my mind. I knew I needed to gather my thoughts, so I decided to go for a hike, thinking some fresh air would help clear my head. I grabbed my camera and stepped out into the cool dawn. As I walked, I tried to focus on the beauty around me, the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, the peace of the forest. Yet an unease lingered beneath the surface. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even with the sounds of the forest all around me. About an hour into my hike, I stumbled upon a stream. The water sparkled and looked inviting. I knelt down to take a drink, splashing some on my face. That's when I saw it. A glimmer, something that didn't belong. I leaned in closer and pulled out what looked like an old, rusted pocket watch. It was buried in the mud, as if someone had discarded it hastily. I turned it over in my hands, examining the strange patterns engraved on its surface. They reminded me of the symbols I had seen carved into the trees. A chill ran down my back. I glanced up, half expecting to see someone watching me, but there was nothing. Just the forest, still and quiet. As I stood there, I heard it again, the whispers. This time the voices seemed more distinct, almost like they were beckoning me. I snapped my head in the direction of the sound, but again I saw nothing. My heart raced as I turned to leave. I didn't want to linger any longer. On my way back to camp, I felt a sharp pain on my arm. I looked down. There was nothing there, but the pain persisted, like fingers pressing into my skin. I quickened my pace, eager to put distance between me and whatever was out there. As I neared the clearing, I noticed a change in the atmosphere. The light felt different, dimmer, like the forest was holding its breath. Back in my tent, I laid the pocket watch on my sleeping bag. My hands shook as I flipped it over again, looking for some kind of identification. That's when I noticed something etched on the back, faint yet recognizable. A name, Henry Kirk. It hit me like a wave of ice. I'd done some research before this trip. I had read stories about a missing hiker named Henry Kirk, who vanished in these woods decades ago. I needed to know more. If this was truly his watch, what had happened to him? I felt a pull, an urgency to uncover the truth, but I also felt the weight of fear creeping back in. What if uncovering the mystery brought more danger? Then, as if on cue, the whispers returned. This time they were louder and more intense. I clamped my hands over my ears, trying to drown them out, but the sound was everywhere, swirling around me. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed outside the tent, shattering the moment. I froze. Whatever was out there had made a move. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, heart racing. This time, I had to confront whatever was in the woods. The night was waiting, and I couldn't run anymore. The night was darker than I expected as I stepped out of the tent, the flashlight beam shaking in my grasp. I held my breath, straining to hear any sounds beyond the soft rustle of leaves. The crash had come from the direction of the stream, and I felt an icy knot in my stomach. Before I could process my fear, I moved toward the sound. The woods felt like a different world at night, shadows shifting in the corners of my vision. My heart pounded in line with each step, adrenaline coursing through me. As I reached the stream, the water shimmered under the moonlight, but it was far from peaceful now. My flashlight revealed the disarray. A large tree branch lay across the ground, half submerged in the water. It hadn't been there earlier. Something or someone had upset the natural order of this place. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I kept moving forward deeper into the darkness. I wanted answers about the watch, about Henry Kirk. I scanned the ground, hoping for any clues, but it was just mud and rocks. Then the whispers flared up again, pulling my attention. They were louder, filling the air with a distant urgency. My skin prickled, and I swiveled, trying to locate the source. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is anyone there?" No response, just the whispers, swirling around me like shadows. I took a step back, ready to flee, when I saw it, peeking out from a bush, a faded backpack. My heart skipped. It looked old and tattered, just like the stories I had read. I rushed over to it, thoughts racing. Could this belong to Henry Kirk? My hands trembled as I unzipped the bag, half expecting to find something sinister. But inside, it was empty, save for a single object, a torn piece of paper, crumpled and worn. With great care, I unfolded it. The handwriting looked shaky, and only a few lines were legible. "If I'm found, follow the whispers. They lead to the truth." A chill ran through me. The truth? What truth? The whispers had led me here. They had found me. I felt a strange pull, and for a moment I considered following them deeper into the woods. But what if it led to danger? Just as I was about to retreat, a figure moved in my peripheral vision. I spun around, flashlight flickering, and that's when I saw them, pale and shadowy against the trees. Shapes, almost human, but not quite. The whispers intensified, urging me to stay. Panic coursed through me. Were these the spirits of the lost? My instincts screamed to run, but my legs felt glued to the forest floor. I couldn't take my eyes off those shapes, entranced and terrified all at once. Then one of them stepped forward, and everything went quiet. The whispers faded, leaving only the sound of my ragged breath. I had to make a choice, confront this entity or flee back to the safety of my tent. But before I could decide, the shadow spoke, its voice echoing in the silence. "You came searching, didn't you? Now you have to follow." I was frozen, caught between the unknown and the instinct to escape. The forest was no longer just a backdrop. It was alive and beckoning, and I had a choice to make. I stood there, heart racing, and felt time stretch. The figure before me, its edge blending with the surrounding darkness, looked almost human, yet something about it felt wrong. I wanted to speak, to demand answers, but all that came out was a shaky breath. "Follow," it repeated, and with a slow motion it turned, gliding deeper into the woods. I felt my legs nearly give way. The urge to run surged through me, but why did I feel compelled to follow? That crumpled note flashed in my mind, the insistence on finding the truth. What truth? About the woods? About Henry Kirk? I swallowed hard and took a small step forward. The figure paused, glancing back, and something about the way it looked at me made my skin crawl. But the longing for answers outweighed my fear, and I pressed on. Branches snapped underfoot, and I aimed my flashlight ahead, the beams slicing through the dark. The trees were taller here, looming over me like ancient sentinels. I felt their silence as heavy as the night air. It was oddly comforting, yet alarming. "Wait!" I called out, hoping the shadow would stop. "What do you want from me?" It didn't answer directly. Instead, it gestured ahead with an elongated arm, pointing toward a thicket. As I drew closer, the whispers returned, wrapping around me with a strange familiarity. Each word felt almost intelligible now, swaying like a haunting lullaby. I pushed through the brush, and my flashlight fell upon something almost hidden, a weathered sign, half buried in the underbrush. "Beware," it read, with other writings scratched around its edges, names I recognized. Henry Kirk among them. A cold dread washed over me. What had happened here? Suddenly the shadow stepped closer, the air thick with tension. "You're not safe in the dark," it murmured. "You seek answers, yet the wilderness protects its secrets." I stepped back, unsettled. The flickering beam of my flashlight caught something glinting behind the sign. I bent down to get a better look and saw a metallic object half buried in the dirt. My heart raced as I unearthed it, an old pocket watch, tarnished but unmistakably bearing the initials HK. The shadow loomed closer, its breath cold against my neck. "Time is not what it seems in these woods," it whispered, "and neither is the past." I jerked back, clutching the watch as if it could shield me from whatever this thing was. "What do you mean?" The figure met my gaze, the void where its eyes should be pulsing with darkness. "Find the others. They are waiting." In that moment, the whispers escalated into a cacophony. I staggered back, my mind racing with the implications of what I had uncovered. The truth was closer than I had thought, and yet understanding felt riskier than I ever imagined. Then came a rustling from the trees beyond, and my instincts kicked in. I didn't know if I could trust the shadow, but the weight of the watch in my palm felt significant. Whatever danger lurked nearby, I had to find out more. But behind me, a new figure emerged from the darkness, a real person, stepping into the beam of my flashlight. I blinked, heart pounding. Who were they, and why were they here? The night was far from over, and the mystery was only beginning to unfold. The person stepped into the light, and I felt my breath hitch. He was disheveled, clothes torn, and dirt covered his skin. There was a wild look in his eyes, a mix of fear and urgency that sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. He glanced at the shadow behind me, and his eyes widened in shock. "You shouldn't be here," he shouted, backing away. "Leave this place now." "Wait," I said, clutching the pocket watch tighter. "I need to know what's going on. I found this." I held out the watch, hoping it would prove my intent. It belonged to Henry Kirk. His gaze fell to the watch, and for a moment I saw recognition flash across his face. "Henry," he whispered, almost to himself. Then he looked at me again, panic creeping back in. "You don't understand. It's not just a watch. This whole forest holds memories. Bad ones." I took a step closer. "What do you mean? Are you here for him?" Do you know what happened?" "Henry isn't the only one," he said, voice shaking. "There are others. They're trapped, like echoes. Sometimes they come back, wanting something." Behind him, the shadows in the trees seemed to pulse, breathing in rhythm with the rising tension. I felt the weight of dread settle again, thick and heavy in my stomach. "Trapped? What do you mean?" He glanced back at the darkness, visibly shaken. "At night, their stories come alive. You don't know what you're inviting in." Then he turned, eyes darting around as if danger lurked in every shadow. "You need to run. Please." Before I could respond, a loud snap of a branch echoed somewhere deeper in the woods. My heart raced. The night was closing in, and I could feel every nerve in my body screaming for me to leave. But I couldn't just turn back now, not when I felt so close to the truth. "Stay with me," I pleaded. "You know something. You need to help me." He shook his head violently. "I'm not safe. None of us are. Please, you don't have to do this. You don't have to find them." "Find who?" I pressed, desperate to get some answers. "What do you know about Henry, about the others?" "The others," he murmured, his gaze drifting. "They won't let you go. They want you to join them." Suddenly, a low growl reverberated from the trees behind him, a menacing sound that sent shivers racing down my spine. "We have to go," I said instinctively. But then I felt it. Something cold at my back, a presence looming closer, and I knew we were not alone. The shadow swelled, a darkness I had tried to outrun now manifesting behind me, just as the newcomer's frantic eyes darted to where it loomed. "Move!" I shouted, and without thinking I grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the path I had come from. We stumbled back the way I had entered, but as branches brushed against my arms, I felt the weight of uncertainty press down on me. I didn't know if I was leading us to safety or deeper into the unknown. The whispers returned, louder, overwhelming, and in that chaos something clung to my mind, the stories that were waiting to be told. As we made our way through the thicket, I caught a glimpse of something, an outline watching us from the depths of the woods, and with every ounce of instinct telling me to look away, I turned. Whatever I found could change everything. My heart thundered in my chest as I stared into the darkness, the outlines of trees twisting into ominous shapes. The moment felt like it stretched out, every second heavy with dread. I caught sight of a figure, faint and blurred against the backdrop of the night. For a breathless moment, it felt like we were locked in a standoff, as if the forest itself held its breath. "Do you see that?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence. The man next to me froze, eyes wide with fear. "Don't look at it," he hissed, panic creeping into his voice. "Just keep moving." But the pull of curiosity was almost magnetic. "I need to understand," I insisted, even as the chill of fear ran down my spine. I forced my legs to stay in place, captivated by the shifting shape. "That's how it gets you!" he shouted, his own fear now spilling over. "You can't let it draw you in! We have to run!" Just then, the figure lurked closer, slipping out of the shadows like a wraith. It was tall, stretching unnaturally, with limbs that bent at unsettling angles. I felt the ground beneath me tremble slightly, as though the earth itself was reacting to its presence. I finally tore my gaze away, following his lead. We plunged deeper into the path, the forest closing in around us. My breathing quickened, and I could hear my own frantic heartbeat echoing in my ears. "We need to get to the clearing," he shouted as we stumbled past thick underbrush. "If we can just reach the old cabin, we might be safe." "Cabin?" I panted. I had no idea if safety was ever truly an option here. "What's at the cabin?" "It holds stories," he answered, voice shaking. "It's where they—" Before he could finish, another growl erupted from behind us, this one closer than the last. I felt the heat of breath against my back, a primal menace clawing at my resolve. "Run!" I screamed, desperation propelling us forward as branches snagged at our clothes and skin. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up, The shadows loomed ever closer, brushing against my shoulders like icy fingers. As we sprinted, I could barely register our surroundings. The trees trapped us, their roots kneeling on the ground like gnarled hands. I didn't dare look back, but I knew something was gaining on us. I could feel it in the way the air shifted around me. Then I saw the beam of moonlight up ahead. "There!" I pointed, energized by the sight. "That must be the clearing!" We propelled ourselves towards it, adrenaline searing through my limbs. As we broke free of the trees and burst into the clearing, relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The cabin loomed before us, old and warped, its windows gaping like hungry mouths. He skidded to a stop, chest heaving. "This is it," he gasped. "But if they've found us—" Just then, a rustling echoed behind us, and I turned. The forest hadn't released its hold yet. In the distance, the shadows began to solidify, a swirling mass of dark energy inching toward the cabin. "It's coming!" I yelled, flooding with fear as the echoes of the trapped stories surrounded us. I felt the pocket watch in my hand pulse with a strange heat, as if it knew something, the very thing we needed to confront what was closing in around us. What do we do? Then as the first shape emerged fully into sight, I understood. It was time to face whatever lingered in the forest, or risk being consumed by it. "We fight," I said, lifting the watch closer to my heart. But as the creature stepped into the light, its features came into focus, and nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. The creature before us was a twisted version of a man. Its skin was pale, stretched tight over bones that jutted out at odd angles. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, wide and unblinking. Fear clawed at my insides, mixing with disbelief. It was like staring at a nightmare come to life. "We can't just stand here," my companion shouted, breaking my trance. He turned and grabbed the door of the cabin, wrenching it open. "Get inside!" I didn't need to be told twice. We dashed into the cabin, slamming the heavy door behind us. The darkness inside felt suffocating, but the walls held a semblance of safety. I leaned against the door, panting, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "What the hell was that?" I gasped. "Something old," he replied, looking around. "Something that should have never been disturbed." I pulled the watch from my pocket, its warmth flickering like a heartbeat. "This thing, it feels alive. Do you know what it is?" He reached for the lantern on the rickety table, lighting it. The flickering flame cast shadows that danced on the walls. "It might be the key. Stories, memories. There's power in them. If we can find out what it wants, maybe we can send it away." "Send it away?" I repeated. "It's not just going to listen to us." "Sometimes they do," he insisted, desperation rising in his voice. "There are stories of hunters who faced things like this and won, but they had to confront the past." I shook my head, feeling the weight of his words. What kind of past are we talking about? Before he could answer, the door rattled violently, a low growl echoing from the other side. The creature was outside, pressing against the wood with a chilling strength. We exchanged fearful glances. "We need to search. There has to be something here," he urged, glancing around the room. The cabin felt ancient, smelling of dust and old wood. I moved to the back wall, noticing something strange, a faded tapestry, its patterns swirling like dark mist. "Look at this," I called out, tracing my fingers over the shapes. "What do you see?" "I don't know," he replied, moving closer, "but it looks familiar." As I squinted at the fabric, the shadows seemed to pulse, and suddenly images emerged in my mind. Hunters, their faces lined with fear and determination, battling back darkness in the woods. There were whispers of a pact made long ago, something tied to the land. A low thud brought me back to the present. The creature was getting impatient. I felt the heat of the watch intensify in my grasp. "It needs stories. Maybe it wants to be remembered," he said slowly, the realization dawning on him. "We can give it that." "But how?" I asked, a new wave of dread washing over me. Just then the door buckled with a deafening crash. The creature's limbs stretched through the opening, the darkness spilling in like smoke. I felt the instinct to flee welling up in my gut, but my feet were frozen. "That's when I saw it," I gasped, pointing at the tapestry as it shimmered. "The answer is in these stories." He nodded, determination replacing fear as we faced the encroaching shadows together. We weren't done yet. We had to speak, summon the memories to save ourselves. The creature's limbs twisted ominously, pushing against the doorframe as if it were made of paper. Panic surged through me. This wasn't just another ghost story. This was our impending doom. "Quick!" I shouted, my voice trembling. "We need to find something, anything!" Without waiting for a response, I threw myself toward the tapestry. It felt like a lifeline in an endless sea of dread. My fingers fumbled against the woven fabric, searching for clues. "What do we say? What do we do?" I whispered, almost pleading. "We tell it the truth," he said, edging closer to me, lantern held high. His face was pale, but there was resolve in his eyes. The stories of hunters that went before us. They had to confront their fears to escape. The creature howled now, a sound that pierced through the air, sending chills down my spine. A wall of darkness loomed, filling the cabin like an invading tide. Time was running out. I pressed my palm against the tapestry, feeling its texture. There must be a reason this is here. Something significant. I studied the patterns as images swirled again in my mind. Falling leaves, broken arrows, old maps. But one image stood frozen. A group of hunters gathered around a fire, sharing stories that held weight, like secrets passed from generation to generation. "It's about the stories they told around the fire," I murmured. "The warnings, the lessons." "Yes!" he exclaimed, eyes widening. "We have to share a story. It needs to hear it." I took a deep breath. The details were foggy, but I gripped the watch tighter, letting its warmth flow through me. "The first time I heard a hunter's tale," I began slowly, my words hesitant, "was about a creature much like this one. A thing that demanded more than just flesh. It craved memories of the past." Outside, the door creaked ominously, the creature pressing harder, but I continued. They said the hunters gathered their strength, facing their fears as they shared their own darkest moments. Weak points turned into strength. I could see the flicker of the creature's form, shift outside the cabin, almost intrigued. "What happened next?" he urged, his eyes locked on me. I searched for the heart of the story, my voice gaining strength. They found that by confronting the darkness itself through their tales, they could push it back. The key was honesty, the vulnerability of their fears. That's what made the shadows retreat. With every word I spoke, the grip of the darkness seemed to waver, but the creature's howling grew louder, more desperate. I pulled the emotions from my core, fear, regret, loss, and thrust them into the air like a spell. Together, they faced the darkness and called it by name, I said, feeling a warmth surge in the room. They said its power is fragile when exposed to truth. The shadows around us hesitated, and I could feel the watch pulsating at my chest, responding to my words. "You aren't just a monster," I shouted into the encroaching night. "You're a memory, you're a past we can't forget." Then, in that moment, it happened. The door snapped open, not with the sound of shattering wood, but a low, mournful wail. The creature's limbs retracted, its grotesque form flickering like candlelight. I staggered back, but I refused to look away. "It's working!" Before us, shadows twisted and refracted. The creature drew back as if caught in a web of truth, flickering between forms. Panic surged through me again, but I couldn't stop now. "To remember is to feel," I cried out, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. "To embrace our fears is to conquer you." The creature writhed. The watch in my hand exploded with warmth, flooding the room with a radiant light. Then everything went still. The shadows stopped moving. I could hear my companion's breath, ragged like mine. "What did we just do?" he asked, eyes wide with disbelief. I stared into the dimness where the creature had stood, a heavy weight of uncertainty settling in my gut. "I don't know," I replied, "but I feel like it's only just begun." And then a whisper floated through the air, soft and haunting. "You will remember." I turned to my companion, my heart racing again. Someone else was in the house. The air felt different. The cabin was thick with a silence that buzzed in my ears. I glanced at my companion, who was staring at the doorway, eyes wide and glassy. "Did you hear that?" I asked. He nodded, but his gaze remained fixed ahead. Then it happened again. The whisper trailed off into a laugh, light and mocking. Anxiety clawed at my throat. "We're not alone," I said, my voice barely audible. I stepped forward, heart racing. "Who's there?" The laughter echoed again, this time followed by a scrambling sound, like something large shuffling against the walls. "It could be another prisoner of the creature," I whispered, edging closer to the door. "No! Stay back!" my companion urged, gripping my arm tightly. I shook his hand off. "We can't hide forever." My courage had swelled, ignited by the strange energy still humming in the air. "We need answers." The darkness near the door shifted, revealing a slender figure crouched in the shadows. My breath caught. The person had the same haunted look as those hunters from the tapestry. Their eyes gleamed with something that felt ancient, skimming over my soul. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice stronger now. The figure straightened, revealing a face lined with age and wear. "I'm lost," they breathed, voice frayed like old rope. "Like you, I once faced the creature. I had forgotten. But now it remembers me." "What do you mean?" My companion spoke up, his curiosity overcoming his fear. They took a step forward, the lantern flickering between us. "It remembers the stories. It thrives on them. They are its lifeblood. You share, and it consumes. You must be careful what you offer." The weight of that warning crashed into me. "You mean it's not just the truth it wants? It needs our memories, our fears?" "Yes," the figure replied, eyes narrowing, "and it grows stronger with each tale. The more you share, the more it feeds. And if you're not cautious, one day you may find yourself lost like me." A rush of dread filled the room. "But we just faced it. We told our story, and it retreated." "Not fully," they said, voice trembling. "You've merely bought time. It will find a way back." Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and I could see my breath. My heart pounded as I turned back toward the door, instinctively leaning closer toward the grip of shadows creeping along the walls. "Back away!" the figure yelled, urgency lacing their tone. A gust blew through the cabin, chilling us to the bone. The shadows darted forward, viscous like oil, swirling in anticipation. I felt the familiar presence of the creature weaving back into reality. And then a name struck me, unbidden in my mind. The Wraith of Lost Tales. My heart raced anew. "We have to fight it again," I shouted, but the figure shook their head. "I can't help you. I'm bound to this place. You must remember without it consuming you." The shadows thickened, pressing in close, the creature's howl resonating once again. I took a step back, realization washing over me. "More stories. We need to tell more." The figure's eyes widened, filled with a mix of fear and hope. "Be brave," they whispered. "But remember, every story carries a piece of you." As the darkness lunged, we stood at the brink, the walls closing in. I gripped the watch, ready to fight again for our memories, but this time I knew we must tread careful ground. And then, just as the shadows leapt from the corners like predators, another voice broke through the chaos, a childlike giggle. I turned. There, amidst the gathering gloom, stood a child. Their innocent smile stood in stark contrast to the dread unfolding around us. "Tell me a story," they said, eyes sparkling with light. The creature paused. I knew we were out of time. "Tell me a story," the child repeated, their voice bright like sunlight breaking through a storm. The shadows hesitated, swirling around, their ominous mass undulating at the edges, drawn to the light radiating from the innocent figure. I felt the rush of desperation surge within me, and yet there was an unmistakable power in that child's presence that forced the darkness to retreat just slightly. Okay," I stammered, feeling the weight of their request. "Once upon a time, in a forest not unlike this one." The words felt absurdly inadequate, yet I continued, knowing we had to hold their attention. There were 3 hunters who ventured deep into the woods. As I spun the tale, the tension in the room shifted. The child listened with rapt attention, eyes wide. Each sentence seemed to weave a barrier, pushing back against the encroaching shadows. "They faced many challenges," I continued, warming to the theme. "But together, through their bond and shared stories, they conquered the darkness that sought to consume them." Behind me, I felt my companion nodding, caught in the moment, ready to add layers to my story, to share his own versions of courage and camaraderie drawn from his experience. And they learned to confront their fears, never letting the darkness twist their memories into despair. The shadows flickered above like angry flames, but the child stood at the center of it all, a beacon of hope. With every word we spoke, we unearthed the essence of storytelling, the light that pushed back against the void. As our tale unfolded, the creature's form writhed, the once menacing features becoming distorted and diluted. "You're only feeding it," the figure interjected urgently, though their tone was softer now, intrigued by the unfolding story. "Remember, with each story, a piece of you lingers. The fear becomes a part of you, but the strength of the bond can shield you too," I replied, feeling the connection solidify between my companion and the lost figure. We needed to push deeper. Suddenly a memory surfaced, a tale I had nearly forgotten. There was one hunter who, when faced with despair, sang a haunting melody beneath the stars. I gestured toward the small window, through which the silver moonlight was peeking, illuminating the cabin. He sang of lost loved ones, of sunlight breaking through the bitterest of cold, and as he sang, the very shadows that sought to claim him dissolved into thin air. The darkness above us pulsed and strained, grappling with the tales being spun in the ethereal light of the lantern. "Tell it about the warmth that lives in our memories," my companion urged, "the joy that cannot be extinguished by darkness." With a deep breath, I shared my feelings about the forest, the beauty I had encountered during my photography trips, the quiet moments spent in solitude, and the wild heart of the animals thriving within the trees. "Their whispers are not always threats," I proclaimed. "Sometimes they are songs, echoes of life itself, telling us we are never truly alone." "Tell it of the connections, of voices of generations past," the figure added, their voice thrumming with urgency. "Those who faced him before, united in purpose." The child's face glowed under our shared motion, absorbing the stories. "Tell me more," they cried, coaxing the fragments of happiness from within, like light filtering through cloud cover. "Tell me a story of love." As they spoke, the creature seethed, the darkness darkening, coiling against itself, desperate for a way back. I glanced at my companion. We had to dig deeper. "Love transcends fear," I said aloud, gathering my strength. "The love of family, of friends, of this forest and its secrets." I thought of the lost souls trapped here, their stories unspoken. Perhaps this forest remembers them too. Remember the laughter of children playing, the embraces of loved ones past, the moments of connection that raised a family. As the words fell from my lips, warmth spread through the cabin, titanic shadows flickering out of existence, even as the overwhelming weight of sorrow tried to pull me under. "From now until forever," I proclaimed, "these stories are our shield. We give them life by sharing them." I could feel the watch in my hand pulsing warmly, its glow illuminating the depth of our resolve. The darkness quaked, echoing with a cry that sounded more like a fading memory than a threat. "Can you hear them?" I turned to the figure. "We share their stories. We let those echoes carry onward. Together!" the figure cried out, arms raised high, beckoning the stories of those who had been lost. "Let your voices resonate beyond this veil." Just as the last of the shadows writhed, a harmony of laughter erupted, the sound reverberating through the cabin like celestial music, lifting the oppressive gloom. In that moment, everything changed. The echoes of laughter began to swirl around us, illuminating the room in a breathtaking embrace. The child stepped forward, standing unafraid, radiating light like a sparkling flame. "Now your story lives on," they said, a smile brightening their face. And with that, the darkness receded, shattering like glass before a fierce wind. The embrace of shadows faded into a gentle reverberation, leaving only the glow of hope and stories conjured in their wake. In the heart of that chaos, I felt a shifting moment, a transition. We were not just survivors, but part of something larger, woven into the fabric of these woods. The weight of our victories, our memories, grew stronger every time we shared our tales. And as the whispers entwined around us, I knew that while the danger may never fully vanish, the connections we forged could guide us, remembering us amid the lingering echoes of that haunted forest. As the winds began to calm, I exchanged glances with my companion and the figure of the lost, witnessing their eyes sparkle with new understanding. The mystery of the woods may remain, and the weight of what transpired here would linger. But we now walked with the strength of stories shared, lightened by the knowledge that shadows were merely testaments to the light we carried within, and they could never extinguish what we had become. Even as the last remnants of the darkness faded into the night, I realized I would carry this experience with me forever, threading new tales into the tapestry of life. No longer would I fear the stories of the lost. They were part of me now. They were the heart of the whispering forest, and we had the power to evoke their truth. As I stepped outside, ready to face whatever lay ahead, I felt the echoes of stories still brewing in the air, waiting, wanting to be shared once more.